My name is Ian Saganash, and today we're filming a documentary about my grandfather Alan. Can you tell me a little bit about yourself, Alan?
Okay, good afternoon everybody. My name is Alan Saganash, and I was born in March 21st, 1950, south of the Broadback River and around the Michigamis area. And I spent my childhood there from the day I was born till I was 6 years old, and I was taken away to a residential school sometime in 1957. Married to a Cree woman. I have 5 children with 1 adopted son. I have 18 grandchildren and 16 great-grandchildren up to date now. I work for the Waswanipi Cree First Nation Council now since 1978 on different projects, and currently I am semi-retired. I work as a consultant on forestry issues, helping to resolve and mitigate the impacts from forestry development and other development projects on the EUSG of Waswanipi with the hunters and trappers. This is my home. I live here. I've been hunting, fishing and trapping here with my father, and we're here to show a little demonstration that we're not satisfied with what's going on with the consultations. In the Pas de Brave, it's an obligation for Quebec and to do consultations with the Cree First Nation of Waswanipi and any Cree nation where they do forestry. And this is chapter 3 of the Pas de Brave. But we've been talking about the Broadback since 2002, 2003. In fact, I submitted a project in 2002, 2003 to protect the Broadback Forest. That's 15 years ago. And nothing has happened much on that, and they still continue to cut near the Broadback River. They're still building roads, and they're still planning into our own protected area that we call Waswanipi Proposed Broadback Protected Area. And we believe that if you leave an intact forest like the Broadback River, you produce an area like a biological refuge area where animals can reproduce, wildlife can reproduce. The caribou are still there, they're still roaming free, the rivers are still roaming free. We can still drink water from the Broadback River.
The Broadback River traditional territory is a land that Alan used to live when he was younger with his family. And the Broadback River is actually a pretty extraordinary river. It holds many species of fish, and many animals get attracted by the river. So the Broadback River connects throughout the territory. It connects to many different lakes, and it's basically a highway for when Alan was younger. They used to travel on that river to get from one place to another. Along the way, they were harvesting fish and other animals as well. It's like paradise to me, I'm a hunter and a trapper and a fisherman, I love to do those type of activities, and I want to protect it as much as I can, and that's why it's so important to me. I want to keep it as it is, as it was many years ago when Alan used to hunt there. So for me, I want to be able to hunt there just the same as him.
South of Hudson's Bay, James Bay, and at the southern tip of James Bay, the settlement of Moose Factory. News Magazine salutes Education Week with films of an Indian residential school 500 miles north of Toronto. Principal Eric Barrington dispenses first aid among his many other duties. He heads one of Canada's 69 Indian residential schools, scattered in key locations as far north as the Arctic Circle. They've a total of 11,000 pupils, orphans, convalescents, those who live too far in the wilderness to get to a daily school. They learn not only games and traditions, such as the celebration of St. Valentine's Day, but the mastery of words, which will open to them the whole range of the ordinary Canadian curriculum. children who live with the midnight sun in their summer holidays an explanation. They come to school in September, go home for holidays in June. Instead of the isolation and neglect of the past, a free and equal chance with children in urban centers. A service begins each day. The school is conducted by the Church of England, though it's maintained, like other Indian schools, by the Federal Department of Indian Affairs. For the oldest Canadians, a new future.
I don't know if you're aware that they find these mass graves all over Canada. All of these children that were never came back home to their families. And some of these children, you know, their parents never found out about what happened to them. They just told them, he passed away and we buried him. That's it. Some of these families never got to see the grave of their children. And just imagine on the impact of that parent losing a child, never seeing that child again, not knowing where that child's buried. And sometimes these schools wouldn't even inform what happened. So Alan, he grew up with his brother. His name was John. So he grew up in Broadback River area. And he played with him, spent time with him. They were I think they're about a year or two apart. So they grew up together. So John was older. John went to school. And John never came back home. He was 5, I think, 4 or 5. I think that's when they started taking children at the age of 5 into residential schools. Yeah, I can't imagine the trauma on the child, and especially for Alan too, never being able to see his brother again. And he has memories of his brother growing up. He has memories of what he looks like, the things that he used to do, playing outside before all the technology, you know, living off the land. He was there spending time with his brother. He was like his best friend. And John never came back home. And I remember Alan telling me the story that his brother John passed away, you know. He never really fully understood. They said he was sick. John was sick and he went to the hospital and he didn't make it. But there's no medical records. There's no documents of what happened to him. They just say he's buried. He's buried now. And they say he's buried at a residential school he attended. And there's no cross, there's no name. Do we really know that's John? You know, there's many things that happen in the residential school. I don't think he suffered from a disease. I don't think he suffered in the hospital. But the truth is coming out. All these graves are being found across Canada. I think there's more than 1,000 children that have been discovered across Canada under residential school, near residential school grounds and stuff like that. I think it's important that we create more awareness to the world, make sure it doesn't happen anywhere else again.
We found a document that says that John passed away in 1954. So I went to school in 1957, so I must have been like 4 or 5 years old at the time when he passed away. And usually the kids that pass away at residential schools, they were buried the same day, okay, so, without no funeral service or nothing. I don't know how they were buried, but if they're going to bury him the same day, I imagine they didn't have a coffin. They were probably wrapped in tarp or plastic and thrown into the grave and forgotten. because the grave site that my mother and my sister found it was unmarked. It was in a cemetery, and that one of the persons knew John. That's an old lady. Took my mom and my sister and pointed out between two graves, that is where your brother John is. That's where your son is buried. 50 years after. So that's quite a long time. I went to Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario. And when I was there at the monastery for a while with the nuns, it's the first time I suffered abuse from the hands of an adult. I never experienced being hit by an adult, or hit or scratched or slapped or anything like that. One of the nuns did that to me because one of the Algonquins got into a fight, and because the Algonquins spoke very good French, I spoke only Cree, and I didn't even understand English. I got in trouble for it. And she pulled my hair from the back. And you're only 6 years old, you know. He pulls your hair like this, and he drags you to the station of bed, locks you in a room, turns off the lights. You're in trouble. You sit in the dark, you're wondering what's going on, and you want to go home. You're crying. You want to go home to see your family, your parents, but that you don't belong here. When I went to school, I never seen cars. I never seen so many people. I've never seen big houses, things like that. All this was new to me. It was like I entered a new world from where I was, totally different. So that's what you call cultural shock. When I was in school, I didn't see my brother there. I asked people about it. That's when the bullying started. I was called a baby, told me I was crazy, your brother is dead, and things like that. You know, in Cree, kids are bullies. So I felt very uncomfortable when I was in school. I really wanted to go home because my brother wasn't there anyway. And I cried at nights, cried myself to sleep. And it continued like that for the whole thing. And the kind of abuse that you suffer when you're a child away from home is something extraordinary, because the fact that I'm a person that came from the bush, a child that was raised in a bush, a child that doesn't know nothing about washrooms inside. I wanted to go to the washroom. I didn't know where to go because I didn't know where the toilet is or how the toilet looked like. In the big building, and this big dormitory, there's a bunch of kids in there. So I opened the door. There's a door there. There's a fire alarm that goes on. So the lights go on, and I'm in trouble again because I opened that door. So they hit me again. They hit me, strapped me, and then all the kids are looking at you, getting hit. Late that night, couldn't hold anymore. I wet my bed, and I'm 6 years old. Again, I was hit for that. So many times I was hit and didn't understand why. So the abuse continued over the years, and this is the kind of life that residential school children lived. You know, you weren't allowed to speak your language. You had to obey every rules, follow the rules. You had to watch your manners. You can't talk while you're eating. It's bad manners. I sit in a restaurant nowadays, and I tell my wife, who never went to residential school, and I'm sitting in this restaurant, and all I hear is buzzing sounds, people talking away in a restaurant. And I told my wife, see those people that are talking away? These are the people that taught me in school that talking while eating is bad manners. Look at them now. It's hard to understand that, you know. I remember the time that my brother went to school. It was an otter plane, the one that didn't have no pontoons. It sat on the water. You know, kind of planes I'm talking about. They're like seaplanes. Okay. And I remember seeing John in the window. The last time I saw him, he was in the window, and face was very sad, like he was crying. And some things that you see, it comes back to you over and over again. You know, they're etched in your mind. So I never forget that. But that year, that summer when I went to school, I was excited in more ways than one because I thought I would see my brother over there. That's where I was told you went. But nobody ever told me that you will never see him again. And get very emotional. I don't know how many times I've told the stories to you about my brother John. Gets rather emotional, you know, because I lost him when he was 4. I'm 72 now, and I still think about him a lot. Thinking that I want to see his grave. I want to know if he's really there, or they're just saying he's there. I want to know if he was buried in a coffin or just wrapped in a plastic bag. All these questions come to mind. I want to exhume the body, bring it up. But in the spiritual world of Cree, this is something bad to do, to disturb the dead. And my mom was always against that. She didn't want me to let my brother alone in peace. And it's my wife always told me that too. It's better that, you know, leave him alone, let him rest in peace. I always question the fact that, you know, if the federal government had enough money to take away the children and put them in residential schools, they had enough money to bring them back after school. When a kid dies in school, it's a crime to bury a child without the parents. That's what I think turns out to be. It's a crime not to inform the parents until a month later. It's a criminal act. So it always wonders in my mind, you know, why that happened. There's so many questions. As I got older, I began to understand more and more what this should have never happened. You know, it's something that could have been avoided. And it was like assimilation.
Even what happened so many years ago, we're still here and we still suffer from it. We're still trying to break that cycle from alcohol abuse to yelling to hitting to fighting, whatever it is, relationship problems, communicating with your mother, you know, telling them how you feel. It's never easy because they never had the chance to express how they felt when they went to residential school. They didn't have a choice. If they cried, if they peed their bed and made an accident, they're punished, or whatever happened, you know. So it's very traumatizing. And yeah, so today I still suffer from that, and I don't know how much longer it's gonna carry it, but we're gonna carry it, but we're trying to break it. I see a lot of people making changes, younger generations making changes, trying to break the cycle. I think it's important that we keep trying.
just learned not too long ago the Cree Nation government wants to negotiate a deal with Quebec for Crees to be more involved in forestry. You know, to have more contracts, more jobs, or things like that. What about the people that want to protect the environment? It's not all about economic development. It's also about preserving the environment, preserving the Cree way of life. That's equally important. That's what we need to talk. If you're going to start giving Quebec, asking Quebec to have more jobs for the Crees in forestry, fine. That's what they'll say. We'll give you, as long as we can cut on your territory, we'll give you jobs. So for a guy like me gets removed from that group because I'm trying to protect the environment. I'm trying to protect the Cree way of life. Okay? And I read the agreement, what they're going to sign with Memorandum of Understanding called MOU. You know, it doesn't talk much about protecting the Cree way of life. It just talks about job security and things, contracts and training programs, etc. That's about it. We need something else on the table. I do a lot of consultations with, like, for 62 trap lines, and I meet the tallyman. Sometimes it's 55 tallymen a year that are impacted by forestry. At the most, it's 57. And many of them talk about the damages on their trap line. They're unhappy about their harmonization measures, and they're saying, well, Quebec is saying that, oh, but we're just following the agreement, what it says. But I don't think they are. Based on my experience, they're not really following the agreement. There's some provisions that are missing. Like, for instance, you don't really look at protective measures on the trap line. They're supposed to develop the directives of wildlife habitats. That means find ways how to cut in a moose yard, find ways how to protect a spawning area for fish, protect the beaver colony area, cut in the rabbit area, marten timberline area, things like that. All right? They're supposed to look at that, develop directives on that. Since 2003, 19 years ago. They haven't done it yet. There's no directives. In 2004, I worked with a bunch of people, MFFP, that's the Government of Quebec staff, Wildlife Department, and some Cree people. And we developed directives in 2004, 2005. We released them in 2005. And we don't know what happened to those. That project was shelved. They put them away. We don't even know what happened to them. They just totally forgot about them after. So meanwhile, they're cutting and cutting and cutting without protective measures. But you know, trying to protect an area like Mishikimis and the Broadback, you go there and visit the area. It's like opening a door in the past. That's the way these hunting grounds are back here in the south were a long time ago. They were flourishing with wildlife, flourishing with tree stands, unpolluted waters. Everything was so fresh. We don't have that much forest anymore left. In fact, I think Mishikimis and Broadback is about 10% of our hunting territory that has not been fragmented by resource development. So it's something that you want to protect. You're part of it. There's 4 elements that you have to look at in the Cree way of life. You have your culture, what you do as people, your livelihood. Then you have your language. Your language is very important to you. Cree is very important. We want to keep that intact. So we have to speak Cree to our children, so they keep that. Then you have your Cree place names. Okay, it's very important when you look at an element of Cree place names, because it's all the lakes, the rivers, the mountains, the creeks, the swamps, the points, the bays. Everything on Cree territory was Cree named in the past. They all had Cree names. And right now, if you look at a map, it's either French or English. And those were changed without our consent. So that's important, is your identity to the land. That's another element. I can tell stories about my grandson that I hunted there 50 years ago. What's the name of that place? Oh, it's Lake Theodat. Theodat? How come it has a French name? Oh, its Cree name is English, Mishikamish. But Grandpa, it says Theodat there. See, he's questioning my identity to the land because it's in French. Your attachment to the land, it's not there anymore. The Cree names are gone. They've been changed without our consent. You only live once, right? You're only young once. Your career is your choice. Today, I believe that many young children, young students or wherever they go to school, but the young generation is making a choice to see what the life they live right now is modernized. Okay, but I encourage them to try to consider their way of life, to practice it, to keep on practicing it, to practice their culture, to speak their language, and to occupy the areas that their ancestors or their parents occupied in the area. If you want to continue practicing your way of life, if you want to continue to preserve for future generations the forest, you must respect it also. Because if you don't, you're going to have nothing left for the next generation of hunters and trappers. Your way of life will die off. Your forest will disappear. We got to try to have more young people involved, because these are our future leaders. So they have to understand what all the fusses are all about before they mature. They need to understand that. I mean, for guys like me, I will leave one day. My work will end, and I will be somewhere else. I need people to follow my footsteps, not to forget who we are, where we came from, and continue our way of life, continue our Cree way of doing things. It's very important. If you want to save your forest intact, you must protect that. That's all I wanted to say. Okay?
Don't give up. Keep going. I know it's difficult and it's hard. Addictions and your emotions, all the trauma. Just keep going. Eventually we'll get there. Maybe not us, maybe our great-great-grandkids. They'll get there. Eventually everything will be back to normal. Everybody will live happy. It's not gonna be sadness. There's not gonna be any more anger. I think it's important that we just keep going. Try your best, trying to break that cycle. I think that's what matters. No, it's definitely not easy. But being out here is definitely making things easier, peaceful. You feel like you can let it out, and there's no stress. You don't worry. You feel like you're where you belong, you're connected.